What would happen if you committed just 100 days to unlocking your bravest self? In 100 Days to Brave, Annie F. Downs guides you through daily devotions, practical prompts, and heartfelt stories designed to break fear's grip and build everyday courage. Whether you felt stuck by self-doubt, paralyzed by what-ifs, or held back from pursuing your purpose, Downs' devotional journey walks you step by step into bold, intentional living. Each short devotional offers a scripture, reflection, and actionable challenge, perfect for building confidence and reshaping your inner narrative. In this video from Detailed Book Summaries, we'll break down the most transformational lessons and key prompts you can start using today. Without waiting for Monday or motivation, you'll learn how small acts of bravery, practiced daily, can shift your mindset and move you toward the life God's created you for. If you're ready to face fear, speak up, and live with intention, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a devotional summary designed to help you grow braver every day.
Chapter 1: Brave Enough to Start. You know that feeling, when something inside you whispers, "It's time," but you're not sure what that means. You just know you can't keep living half alive. You feel this ache, this quiet restlessness, and it's not because you're ungrateful. It's because there's something more honest waiting for you on the other side of the fear. Something braver. Something more you. That's where Annie F. Downs meets us in the very first stretch of 100 Days to Brave. She doesn't show up with a trumpet and a battle cry. She shows up like a friend with a warm blanket and a soft nudge saying, "You don't have to feel brave to be brave. You just have to start." And suddenly the mountain doesn't look so high. This whole beginning, the first thematic cluster, is about the courage it takes to get out of bed and admit you want something different. The kind of bravery that doesn't make headlines but shifts everything. Like choosing to be honest in a world that rewards performance. Like saying yes even while your hands are still shaking. Annie reminds us that bravery doesn't start when you have a plan. It starts the moment you decide to listen to that small voice inside you. The one that's been waiting patiently for you to stop pretending. You don't need a 5-year strategy. You don't need approval. You don't need to know how it all turns out. You just need to take the next right step. What's remarkable is how she keeps the invitation so gentle. She knows what it's like to feel unqualified, to look at your life and wonder if your story is worth telling. But she says, again and again, you were made on purpose, with purpose. And that truth isn't earned. It's the starting point. Can you imagine how differently we'd live if we really believed that? If we believed we didn't have to become worthy because we already are? That kind of knowing changes the way we move. It frees us to be messy and brave and human. It frees us to begin. And beginning doesn't always look like crossing a finish line. Sometimes it's just whispering a yes into the silence. Sometimes it's getting up when no one's cheering. Sometimes it's forgiving yourself for waiting so long. There's this beautiful shift that happens when you let go of the pressure to be spectacular and just decide to be real. Annie shares from her own life. Not polished stories with perfect outcomes, but moments of uncertainty, disappointment, and unexpected grace. She walks beside us, not ahead of us. And in doing that, she gives us permission to begin from where we are, not where we think we should be. It's almost revolutionary how she reframes bravery as something ordinary. Not heroic. Just real. Just honest. Just faithful to the truth. And isn't that what we need? To be reminded that we don't have to wait to feel ready. That we don't need to have it all figured out. That it's okay to be scared and still start anyway. She talks about fear too. Not in a dismissive way but with understanding. Fear is part of the process. But it doesn't get to drive the car. It doesn't get to decide our lives. Fear can ride along but bravery has to take the wheel. And the beautiful thing? The more we practice bravery, the easier it gets to recognize. The easier it becomes to spot those tiny windows of opportunity. Those moments when you could either shrink or rise. The moments when your gut says no, even if your mouth wants to say yes. Or when your heart lights up about something, and you choose not to dim it. Starting doesn't require fireworks. Just honesty. Just one small yes. One decision to trust that your voice matters. That your story matters. That your life right now is not a mistake. There's a sweetness in the way Annie invites us to drop the lies we've been carrying. The lies that say we're too much, or not enough, or too late, or unworthy. She doesn't shame us for believing them. She just holds up the truth like a lantern and says, "What if you didn't have to carry that anymore? And when we put those lies down, even just one of them, the path becomes a little lighter. We have more room to breathe, to try, to imagine again, because starting is about space, and truth, and trust. You may still be afraid. That's okay. Brave people always are. You may still feel lost. That's okay. Brave people walk through the fog too. But if you can be honest, if you can take one step today and then one more tomorrow, you've already begun. That's bravery. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep walking even with it. So if you're standing at the edge of something new, if your heart is beating a little faster as you read this, know this. You don't have to leap. You don't have to roar. You just have to move. Even if it's slow, even if it's small, even if no one claps. Because the bravest thing you'll ever do is start being fully, wholly, wonderfully you. And the time to start is now. Chapter 2, Brave Enough to Be You. You know what's harder than being brave out in the world? Being brave enough to show up as yourself. Not the version that makes people comfortable. Not the one you've polished to meet expectations. Just you. The real one. The one who's still figuring things out. The one who sometimes doubts, sometimes cries, sometimes lights up with joy over tiny things, and other times feels invisible in a room full of people. This part of the journey, this stretch we're in now, it's not about external victories or dramatic leaps of faith. It's quieter, deeper. This is where the real work begins, because it's about coming home to yourself. And that takes a kind of courage most people spend their whole lives avoiding. See, the world has trained us to adapt. From the time we're small, we learn to read the room, match the energy, dial ourselves up or down so we're palatable. And slowly, almost without noticing, we start living a version of ourselves that's acceptable, likable, productive, but not whole. And one day it catches up with you. You wake up feeling off, like you're wearing someone else's clothes. You've got the job, maybe the friends, maybe the house or the relationship, but it all feels just a little misaligned. And you don't know why. That ache? That restlessness? It's not failure. It's your soul calling you back. Back to the you who existed before the world told you who to be. That's what this part of 100 Days to Brave is really about. Not performing courage, but practicing authenticity. Because that's what real bravery looks like when you strip away the show. It looks like being honest, being whole, being you. Annie doesn't hand out steps or strategies here. She invites you into honesty. She opens the door gently and says, You're allowed. You're allowed to be who you are. Fully. Without shrinking. Without explaining. It sounds simple, right? But living it is something else. Because if you've ever dared to show up as your whole self, you've probably been misunderstood. Maybe even rejected. And that hurts. Annie knows that. She tells her stories not from some mountaintop of certainty, but from the middle of the mess, where she's still figuring it out too. That's what makes her voice feel like a safe place. You don't feel preached at. You feel seen. She reminds us that bravery isn't about volume. It's not about being loud or bold in the ways people expect. It's about truth. It's about alignment. It's about standing in a room full of people and choosing not to disappear. Not to water yourself down. Not to apologize for your joy, or your grief, or your deep belly laughs, or your quiet intensity. We've all been taught, whether directly or indirectly, that we're too something. Too much. Too quiet. Too intense. Too weird. Too sensitive. Too loud. So we edited. We shaved off the edges. And now we walk through life wondering why we don't feel whole. But what if the things you've been told to hide are actually the most important parts of who you are? What if the things you thought made you strange are actually the exact things that make you sacred? What if God made you that way on purpose? Annie leans into this truth. You were crafted by a creator who makes no mistakes. That means your wiring, your timing, your dreams, even your awkwardness. It's all intentional. You don't have to edit what God designed. And still we compare. Oh, how we compare. Someone else's confidence. Their family. Their platform. Their peace. We look at their story and start to feel like ours is missing something. But comparison is a lie wrapped in pretty packaging. It makes you believe that their path is better, but it never tells you what it cost them. It never shows you their late nights, their breakdowns, their own moments of doubt. And more importantly, it blinds you to your own beauty. You don't need to match someone else's rhythm. You just need to tune into your own. Your voice. Your way. Your soul. Annie says it straight. You were not made to be someone else's echo. And isn't that what it all comes down to? Bravery means learning to hear your own voice again, to speak your thoughts without first running them through a dozen filters, to laugh the way you laugh, to feel deeply, to take up the space that's been yours all along. It's not about becoming someone different. It's about remembering who you've always been underneath the noise. And that remembering is holy work. It's the work of waking up to yourself with gentleness, not judgment, of letting go of the lies, the ones that say you're too far behind or too broken, or that you missed your chance. It's never too late to come home. Some days, bravery looks like standing in front of the mirror and speaking truth to yourself. Not flattery, not hype, just truth. Like, I'm allowed to be here. I matter. I don't have to earn the right to exist. Other days, it looks like choosing not to participate in conversations that diminish you. It looks like resting when the world says hustle. It looks like being, Chapter 3, brave enough to believe God. You ever notice how much easier it is to believe in God than to actually believe Him? We say the words. We know the verses. We nod along in church or underline all the right quotes in our journals. But deep down, when the lights are off and it's just you and your thoughts, there's this lingering question whispering, can I really trust Him? This is the sacred ground Annie steps onto in thematic cluster 3, brave enough to believe God. Not just believe in Him, but believe what He says. About the world, about the future, and most intimately about you. Because here's the truth most of us live with quietly. We believe God is good, sure, just not always to us. Not when the prayers go unanswered. Not when the diagnosis comes. Not when the relationship ends. Not when the door closes. We hold this duality, praising God in public while panicking in private. And Annie doesn't judge us for that. She gently, bravely leans into it. She says, I know. Me too. But let's look again. And so we do. We look again. And what we find, if we stay long enough in the discomfort, is that the bravest kind of faith isn't loud. It's not flashy. It's not even always confident. The bravest kind of faith is quiet, gritty, persistent belief in the face of uncertainty. It's waking up each morning and saying, okay, God, I don't see how this turns out, but I'm going to choose to believe that you're good anyway. I'm going to choose to believe that your word applies to me. Not just the person on the podcast or the woman in the pew next to me. Me. That's the kind of bravery this section calls us into. Not theological certainty, but relational trust. Because God doesn't ask us to map the future. He asks us to trust Him with it. Annie shares moments from her life where God's promises felt almost laughable. Times when it looked like nothing was working out. Times she felt unseen, passed over, confused. And yet, and this is where it hits deep, those were the very moments where God was doing something under the surface. Just didn't look like victory yet. And maybe that's where you are. In that in-between. That ache of not yet. The middle of a story you didn't choose. If so, Annie's words will wrap around you like a blanket. You are not forgotten. And God is not done. You don't have to pretend everything is fine. Bravery isn't denial. It's faith in motion. It's looking your situation in the face and saying, even here, I will believe. And what are we believing exactly? We're believing that God sees you, that He knows what you carry, every heartbreak, every hesitation, every quiet hope you've never said out loud. We're believing that when God says you are loved, He means you right now. Not the future you who finally gets it together. You in the mess. You with your doubts. You with your broken plans and tender heart. Believing God means daring to imagine that His goodness isn't based on our performance. It's based on His character. It means loosening our grip on outcomes and holding tighter to His presence. It means trusting that even if the story looks different than we hoped, it can still be holy. Annie paints this picture of what it looks like to live with this kind of trust. It's not passive. It's fiercely hopeful. It's the kind of faith that waits, but not with arms crossed. The kind that waits with eyes open, heart expectant, feet ready to move when the time is right. Sometimes believing God means doing the next faithful thing, even if you're still waiting on the breakthrough. Sometimes it means getting up again, praying again, loving again, sowing seeds in a dry field just because you believe rain is still coming. It means being brave enough to hope again after disappointment. And that might be the scariest kind of bravery of all, hope after heartbreak. Because we've all had prayers that didn't get answered the way we wanted. We've all had moments where God felt silent. And it's tempting to protect ourselves by not hoping too hard. But Annie gently reminds us, hope is not foolish. It's faithful. And it's worth the risk. Because God isn't asking you to muster belief from nothing. He's asking you to look at who He has been. To trace the thread of His faithfulness through your story. Even in the hard parts. Especially in the hard parts. And once you see it, once you spot even a flicker of His presence in your past, you realize maybe you can trust Him with your future too. Maybe you don't need to know the whole plan. Maybe you just need to believe that He's still writing. This section isn't about arriving at perfect faith. It's about choosing to stay in the relationship with God. Even when it's complicated. Even when you're mad or tired or unsure. It's about learning that your questions don't disqualify you. Your doubts don't scare Him. Your humanity doesn't make you less lovable. In fact, it's in those exact places, your weakness, your fear, your not enoughness, that His strength shows up most powerfully. It's not your belief that makes God faithful. It's His faithfulness that gives your belief strength. So wherever you are in your story, whether your faith feels fiery or faint, whether you're shouting praises or whispering prayers through tears, this is your reminder. You are brave for staying, brave for trusting again. Brave for believing that God is who He says He is, even when life doesn't look like you thought it would. You don't have to feel certain to be faithful. You just have to keep choosing Him, one shaky yes at a time. Chapter 4, Brave Enough to Dream. What if the thing you secretly long for, the vision you sketch in the corners of your mind when no one's watching, is not foolish? What if it's sacred? What if the dream you've buried under years of practicality and disappointment is the very thing God planted inside you to grow your courage? Because here's the quiet truth this section of 100 Days to Brave lays bare. It takes boldness to dream. Not just because dreams are big, but because they require vulnerability. They ask us to hope in the face of what's unfinished. They dare us to believe that what we imagine might actually matter. Somewhere along the way we stopped dreaming. Not because we stopped wanting, but because we started fearing. We feared looking foolish. We feared being disappointed. We feared trying and failing and feeling the sting of silence when the world didn't clap back with approval. So we told ourselves it was better to be realistic. We called it being responsible, being grounded. But really deep down, we just didn't want our hearts broken again. And Annie sees that. She feels that. She doesn't push us to plaster our walls with vision boards and manifest our destiny. No, she looks us in the eye and says, I know it's hard. But that thing you keep hiding, that dream that won't die, it's time to look at it again. Because dreaming is not some fluffy luxury. It's spiritual. It's an act of worship. It's choosing to believe that God isn't done writing goodness into our stories. And it's choosing to participate in that process, not just passively watching but partnering. See, dreams aren't just about outcomes. They're about trust. They're about walking with God into the unknown and saying, use me. Stretch me. Let me. And that's terrifying. Because it means letting go of control. It means opening your heart to something you cannot guarantee. It means investing energy and prayer and time and soul into a vision with no expiration date and no promise of applause. But it's also what makes us come alive. In this cluster, Annie invites us to reconnect with that part of ourselves that still believes in possibility. That little girl self or wide-eyed teenage version who once believed anything could happen and wasn't afraid to want. She gently, slowly, without pressure leads us back there. Not to stay frozen in naive hope, but to recover our holy longing. And here's what she doesn't say but what we all feel. Many of us stopped dreaming because the last time we did, we got burned. We put our heart into something and it didn't work out. The door slammed shut. The timing went off the rails. The people who were supposed to support us disappeared. Or worse, our dream did happen, and it didn't feel like we thought it would. So now we keep our hope on a leash. Tightly wound. Safe. But Annie looks us in the eye and whispers, you can try again. Maybe not with the same dream. Maybe it's evolved. Maybe you've evolved. But the invitation to dream? That still stands. She reminds us that God is not offended by our ambition. Not when it's rooted in love. Not when it's an offering. God gave you that imagination for a reason. That fire, that idea, that vision, it's not a coincidence. It's an echo of His own creativity. And yes, He may refine it. He may redirect it, but He never wastes it. So what is it for you? What's the dream that's been stirring quietly, waiting for you to say yes? Is it writing the book? Opening the shop? Starting the ministry? Going back to school? Moving to that city? Starting that podcast? Mentoring that teen? Painting again? Or maybe it's deeper than that. Maybe the dream is to believe that love is still possible. Maybe the dream is to become a mother, even after all the heartbreak. Maybe it's to feel peace in your body, to live unburdened by shame, to create a home where joy breathes freely. Whatever it is, big, small, private, public, it matters. Because here's what Annie knows. God doesn't call us to dreams that feed our egos. He calls us to dreams that free our souls and help free others too. And often, dreaming isn't even about the final product. It's about the transformation that happens in us when we dare to believe again. When we say, God, I don't know where this will lead, but I trust you enough to move. That's faith. That's bravery. That's co-creation. Annie shares that sometimes our dreams don't come to life in the way we imagine. But even then, especially then, God is still working, still weaving, still honoring the offering of our hope. So here's the shift. Instead of asking, what do I want to get from this dream? We begin asking, who am I becoming as I say yes to this dream? Because maybe the dream's purpose was never just the end goal. Maybe the dream was meant to make you bolder, softer, wiser, braver, more open to God. And maybe that's the real miracle. So what does it look like right now to dream again? Starts with noticing what moves you, what you love, what you miss, what stirs something deep in your chest that says, more please. It means giving yourself permission to long for things that matter to you, not just what others approve. It means writing the thing down, praying over it, talking to someone safe about it, taking one small step in its direction, even if you don't know where it leads. Because dreams don't just drop out of the sky fully formed. They start as whispers. And bravery means choosing to listen. Bravery means picking up your hope again, even if your hands are still trembling from the last time it fell. Bravery means trusting that the God who gave you this vision won't abandon you in the middle of it. So go ahead, dream again. Not because you're guaranteed a perfect outcome, but because the process of dreaming makes you more you. And that is holy ground. Chapter 5, Brave Enough to Work Hard Stuff. So here's the thing nobody tells you when you're just starting to believe in a dream. Dreaming is the easy part. The hard part is showing up. Again, and again, and again. This stretch of 100 days to brave? It's where things get a little messy, a little more grounded, and if we let it, a lot more meaningful. Because this is where dreaming meets discipline, where desire meets sweat, where calling meets character. You can feel Annie's tone shift a bit here. Not into pressure, but into invitation. She's not shouting from a stage. She's standing beside us, wiping sweat from her brow, saying, yep, it's hard sometimes, but it's worth it. Let's keep going. And that's what this cluster is all about. Hard work isn't glamorous, but it's deeply holy. It's holy because it forms you. And nothing that forms you happens quickly. We live in a world that worships shortcuts. We want success in 6 steps, growth in 30 days, influence overnight. But Annie, with that honest, no-frills wisdom of hers, reminds us, God is more interested in your formation than your fame. And formation takes time. She walks us through what it means to live faithfully in the middle. The long, often quiet stretch of effort where no one is clapping and results are slow and doubt keeps circling back. She doesn't romanticize it. She honors it. She says, this is where most people give up. But you don't have to. You can keep going. You can work hard and stay soft. Because working hard isn't just about the hustle. It's about faithfulness. It's about doing the next right thing with love and intention, even when no one notices. It's about sowing seeds today that may not bloom until years from now. It's about waking up early or staying up late or making sacrifices, not for applause but because this matters to you. Because it's part of the story you're building. And God? He sees every part of that. Every dish you wash with love. Every email you write with care. Every idea you draft and redraft. Every job you show up to with integrity. Every moment you say yes to your calling, even when no one claps. He sees it all. Annie tells us it's brave to keep going when things are mundane. When they're messy. When they're not inspiring or romantic or fun. It's brave to keep doing what's right even when it doesn't feel rewarding. And isn't that where most of us get stuck? We thought saying yes to our calling would come with a soundtrack and a spotlight. Instead, we get spreadsheets, crying babies, bills, lonely nights, endless to-do lists, resistance, rewrites, rejections. But what if this, the ordinary, persistent, unglamorous this, is what builds us? What if this is the furnace where faith is forged? Annie invites us to shift the way we see work. Not as a punishment or just a means to an end, but as worship. Yes, worship. When you work with love and excellence, when you give your best even when it costs you, when you labor over something you believe in, that's holy ground. She reminds us that Jesus spent most of his life as a carpenter. Not preaching, not healing, just building things with his hands. Quiet, faithful, present. And if Jesus could honor the sacredness of ordinary work, then so can we. So what does working hard look like in real life? It looks like starting the project even though the fear of failure is loud. It looks like showing up to the job you don't love, because your presence there still matters. It looks like parenting with patience when you're running on empty. It looks like creating without guaranteed outcomes. It looks like being honest in your work, even when cutting corners is easier. It looks like honoring your body, your time, your energy, because you're not a machine. And Annie's very clear about that last part. Hard work is not the same as hustle culture. You are not what you produce. You are not your achievements. Your worth is not a spreadsheet. God's love doesn't increase when your output does. Bravery in this cluster is about discipline wrapped in grace. It's about effort without ego. It's about showing up not to prove something but to build something. Annie talks about perseverance too, about the days you want to quit, the moments when you hit walls, creative, emotional, relational. And she tells the truth. Sometimes quitting will look more reasonable than continuing. But she reminds us, there's something powerful on the other side of staying. When you keep showing up in faith, even in failure, something deep and eternal is being formed in you. Character, resilience, maturity, trust. And that's the stuff that lasts. That's the kind of bravery that isn't loud. It won't trend online. It won't always get noticed. But it transforms you. And here's something else Annie gives us permission to hold close. You don't have to do it perfectly. Working hard isn't about always getting it right. It's about being willing to try, to learn, to fall and rise, to stay in the room when you'd rather run, to finish what you started, to trust that it matters even when no one's watching. And most importantly, to do it all not for identity but from identity. You are already loved, already enough, already seen. Your hard work doesn't earn that. It simply expresses it. So here we are, in the middle of the race, the middle of the project, the middle of the season that doesn't always feel exciting, but is still sacred. And Annie's voice echoes gently in our ears. Don't give up. You are doing holy work. You are brave for staying. Keep sowing. Keep believing. Keep building. Even when it's slow. Even when it's lonely. Even when it feels invisible. Because it's not. God sees. God honors. God multiplies. And the work you do in faith, even if it feels small, is never wasted. Chapter 6. Brave enough to love others. Loving people is not easy. Let's just say that out loud. It's beautiful. It's sacred. It's what we're made for. But it's also messy and painful and inconvenient. It bumps up against every fear we carry, every wound we thought we healed, every part of us that just wants to stay safe. But here's the truth Annie brings forward in this section. You can't live a brave life without learning how to love bravely. Not just love when it's convenient. Not just love when it's returned. Not just love the easy people. But love, period. The kind that risks. The kind that stays. The kind that sees through the walls and leans in anyway. And if you're already tired just thinking about it, that's okay. Because love will cost you something. But it also changes everything. Annie doesn't just throw around words like kindness and grace in abstract ways. She shows us what love looks like in the real world. It's the text you send to the friend who ghosted you. It's the decision to forgive someone who never apologized. It's the willingness to listen without correcting. It's the quiet resolve to show up, not with an agenda, but with open hands. Because brave love isn't loud. It's present. It doesn't always fix or rescue. It doesn't always solve the problem, but it shows up anyway. And that's what this cluster is all about. The courage to stay in relationship when it gets hard. Annie tells the truth we all know deep down. People are complicated. They disappoint us. They stretch us. They challenge our boundaries. They don't always love us the way we need. But still we're called to love them. Not perfectly, but bravely. And here's where the rubber meets the road. Loving others requires that we first get honest with how we see ourselves. Because if we're walking around full of shame and insecurity, our love will always be conditional. It'll say, I'll love you if you love me back. I'll love you if you don't make me uncomfortable. I'll love you as long as it doesn't hurt. But real love, brave love, doesn't hinge on performance. It's not a contract. It's a covenant. And Annie makes one thing especially clear in this section. You are not meant to carry other people's lives for them, but you are meant to walk beside them. That distinction is huge. Bravery doesn't mean codependence. It doesn't mean being a doormat or always saying yes. Sometimes loving well means setting healthy boundaries. Sometimes it means walking away from toxic relationships. Sometimes it means speaking hard truths. Sometimes it means not rescuing someone from the consequences of their choices. And sometimes it means forgiving quietly and carrying on with your life. Even if reconciliation isn't possible, all of that is love. And all of it is hard. But here's the key. You love others best when you love from a place of wholeness, not desperation. So Annie takes us back to the source. She reminds us that brave love is rooted in God's love. Not in our capacity, not in our moods, but in the bottomless, steady, always reaching love of God that first found us. And if God could love us through all our mess, the doubts, the detours, the sins, the stubbornness, then how could we not at least try to extend that same grace to someone else? Not because they deserve it, but because we didn't deserve it either. And yet, love came for us. That kind of perspective changes everything. Because now, love isn't about keeping score. It's not about who wins. It's not about who was right. It's about being faithful to the heart of Christ in every interaction. Even if the person never changes. Even if they never see what you gave. Brave love releases the outcome. It says, I will love you not because of what you do for me, but because of who I am and who God is. And that's not weakness. That's power. You'll feel it when you choose grace over retaliation. When you pray for someone instead of gossiping. When you give someone space instead of forcing a resolution. When you serve someone who can't pay you back. When you give without strings attached. When you stay open in a world that teaches you to shut down. Annie reminds us, bravery in relationships is not about perfection. It's about presence. It's saying, I'm still here. And sometimes that includes self-love too. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop chasing approval. To stop contorting yourself to be accepted. To let go of the relationship that's draining you dry. Because if loving someone else requires abandoning yourself, that's not love. That's captivity. True love includes you too. So if you've ever wondered whether you're loving right, if you've wrestled with when to stay and when to go, when to fight for the connection and when to walk away, Annie says this, keep asking God. He'll show you. He always will. But don't close your heart just because you've been hurt. Don't give up on people just because some of them failed you. Love is risky, but it's worth it. It's how we were designed to live. So love big, love wisely, love bravely, even when it's hard. Even when it doesn't make sense. Even when the other person doesn't love you back. Because that's the kind of love that changes the world. Not the stuff of Hallmark cards, but the love that gets down in the dirt and stays. The love that gives without needing to be noticed. The love that looks like Jesus. That's the call of this cluster. And if you're reading this with tears in your eyes, thinking of someone you're trying to love, or someone who's hurt you, or maybe just wishing someone loved you that way, know this. You are not alone. You are not crazy for still hoping. You are not weak for still caring. You are brave. Brave enough to love. Brave enough to forgive. Brave enough to begin again. And even on the days when you feel like giving up, grace will meet you there. Love will always meet you there. Chapter 7. Brave enough to be where you are. You know that subtle ache you get when you're scrolling through other people's lives online? Seeing the highlights, the upgrades, the seemingly magical leaps forward? That feeling that maybe you're behind, maybe you missed something, maybe if you were just a little more motivated or disciplined or lucky, you'd already be there wherever there is. Yeah, that. This final thematic cluster of 100 Days to Brave is Annie's gentle hand on your shoulder, her voice low and kind, saying, "Hey, you're not behind. You're not lost. You're here. And that's okay." Sounds simple, but being where you are, truly being present in your actual life, your current season, with all its waiting and wondering and daily rhythms, is one of the bravest things you'll ever do. Because being here means letting go of control. It means surrendering your timelines, your should-have-beens, your carefully curated 5-year plans. It means looking around and deciding to love what is, even as you hope for what could be. And that's not passive. That's not giving up. That's sacred. It's an act of defiant peace. In this part of the journey, Annie talks about how we often miss the beauty of now because we're obsessed with the next. We think bravery is about moving forward. But sometimes bravery is about staying still, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and allowing this moment to be enough. Maybe you're in a season that feels too slow, or too painful, or too small. Maybe you're waiting on answers, waiting on healing, waiting for something to start or something to end. And in the meantime, life just keeps going. Dishes pile up, emails arrive, kids cry, the clock ticks, and you think this can't be it. But what if it is? What if this stretch of ordinary is the soil where your roots are deepening? What if God isn't punishing you with delay, but protecting you in the pause? What if the slower pace is actually a mercy? Annie doesn't sugarcoat the waiting. She honors the ache, the disorientation, the boredom, the quiet grief of unanswered prayers. She's lived in that space too, and she gets it. Which is why her words feel like they've been written in the waiting, not from the other side of it. And here's what she says over and over. You are not missing your life. This is your life. Right now. Right here. Even with the mess. Even with the waiting. Even when it doesn't look like you pictured. This cluster asks you to sit with that. Not rush past it. Not fix it. Just be with it. Like sitting beside a friend who's crying. Not offering solutions, just presence. That's how we learn to be present with ourselves. We stop trying to clean everything up before we allow it to be sacred. We let the kitchen sink and the broken dreams and the unmade plans become an altar. We light a candle in the middle of our clutter and say, God is here too. That's what Annie wants us to feel in our bones. God is in the now. Not just in the miracle to come. Not just in the mountaintop moment. Not just in the long-awaited breakthrough. But in this morning. In this grocery run. In this awkward conversation. In this unanswered email. In this grief you're still carrying. He is not waiting for you to arrive. He is with you in transit. And here's the wild truth that unlocks peace. You don't have to understand this season for it to be valuable. It may not be productive in the way the world measures productivity. It may not be Instagrammable. It may not have clear direction or reward. But that doesn't mean it's wasted. In fact, this might be the most important part. Because being present teaches us to trust God's timing. To stop striving and start listening. To believe that there is a richness in the moment that can't be rushed or replicated. And when we stop resisting the now, when we stop holding our breath waiting for the real thing to start, we suddenly find ourselves living with a kind of quiet joy. The kind that doesn't depend on circumstances. The kind that sees beauty in the mundane. The kind that shows up even in sorrow and says, this too is part of my story. Because being brave enough to be where you are doesn't mean you stop dreaming. It just means you stop abandoning the moment in front of you. You learn to love the place you're standing, even if it's not where you hope to be. You take ownership of your space, your story, your season. You say, okay, I'm here. What do you want to show me now, God? And He will. He'll speak through the ordinary, through the long commute, through the silence, through the messy table full of half-eaten cereal and unpaid bills, through the hard conversations and the small victories, through the loneliness, through the laughter, through the late-night drives when you're crying and not sure why, through it all. Because here is where He is. And Annie helps us hold that with reverence. She closes this cluster with reminders to breathe, to notice, to celebrate small wins, to give thanks for the in-between, to trust that healing can happen even without clarity, that joy can bloom even in imperfect places, That we are not waiting for our lives to begin. They're already happening. Right here. Right now. And that is sacred. Chapter 8. Brave enough to be you. Let me ask you something and take a second to really sit with it. Who are you when no one is watching? Not the you on Instagram. Not the you at work. Not even the you your family thinks they know. I'm talking about the real you. The you that shows up in the quiet. The one who still carries dreams that don't make sense to anyone else. The one who struggles with parts of your story you don't talk about out loud. The one who feels too much, tries too hard, holds back, apologizes for taking up space. That you. This final section, thematic cluster 8, is about coming home to her. To you. It's about peeling back the layers and deciding that who you are as is not only acceptable but exactly what God had in mind all along. And friend, that's radical. In a world that constantly tries to tell us who to be, smaller, prettier, louder, tougher, less emotional, more agreeable, it is an act of holy rebellion to simply say, I'm going to be me. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. And Annie knows how scary that sounds, because being yourself fully and freely means being seen. It means stepping out without camouflage. It means risking rejection and judgment and failure. But here's what this cluster reminds us. Hiding is exhausting. Pretending is a slow erosion of your soul. And you weren't made to live edited. You were made to live whole. This is the crescendo of 100 Days to Brave. Not the call to become someone else, but the call to return to who you already are. The whole journey, every previous cluster, has been building to this. And Annie walks us through it gently. She talks about the layers we put on to survive. The performance mask we wear at work. The silence we hold in conversations where our truth doesn't feel welcome. The guilt we carry for having needs, limits, emotions, desires. And slowly, lovingly, she invites us to start laying it all down. Because being brave enough to be you isn't about broadcasting your flaws to the world. It's about no longer apologizing for your existence. It's about learning that you are allowed to take up space. That your voice matters. That your opinions are valid. That your experiences, even the broken ones, are part of something sacred. And maybe the most healing truth of all? You don't have to earn your belonging. You don't have to hustle for your worth. You already have it. Because God never made a mistake when He made you. Your personality, your quirks, your intensity, your softness, your weirdness, your hunger for connection, your need for solitude, your dreamer heart, your desire to help, your inability to fake it. None of it is too much. None of it is wrong. All of it is you. And you are beloved. Annie's not giving us permission to stay stuck. No, this kind of self-acceptance actually fuels growth. But it's grace-fueled growth, not shame-driven striving. It's transformation that starts from love, not lack. Because once you stop trying to be someone else, you free up your energy to become the most alive version of yourself. And that's what the world actually needs. We don't need more polished perfection. We need more honest presence. We need more people who are comfortable in their own skin, because those are the people who make space for others to be free too. And here's where Annie brings it full circle. When you live as your whole self, you give glory to the one who created you. Your authenticity becomes worship. Your vulnerability becomes testimony. Your life becomes invitation. This is not about confidence for the sake of ego. It's not about being loud or flashy or needing attention. It's about walking through the world with a quiet, rooted assurance that says, I am who I am. And that is enough. Not because you've done everything right, but because He did. This cluster ends with an echo of the first. Bravery isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily choosing. To believe you're loved. To believe you belong. To believe your story matters. To believe you can keep going, even when it's hard. To believe you don't need to change your wiring, your personality, your past to be useful to God. And here's something else Annie leaves with us. Something you might want to write on a sticky note or whisper to yourself when the doubt creeps in. You are the only you we've got. And we need you. Fully you. Authentically you. Brave, imperfect, present you. So don't shrink. Don't edit. Don't disappear. Be here. Be seen. Be you. That's the bravest thing of all. Cluster 9. Brave enough to live the whole journey. Let's be honest. You didn't just pick up 100 Days to Brave because you wanted a pretty little devotional. You picked it up because something inside you was longing, not just to be inspired, but to be changed. And somewhere between day 1 and day 100, something did shift. Even if life still feels messy, even if your circumstances haven't magically transformed, even if you didn't check off every brave thing you hoped to do, you changed. Because showing up is brave. And that's the heartbeat of this final cluster. Bravery isn't a destination. It's a rhythm, a posture, a way of life. It's the willingness to live awake. And that's revolutionary in a world numbed out on autopilot. You might be thinking, okay, I've gone through the clusters. I've taken the notes. What now? Now you live. Now you wake up every morning and choose courage not as a one-time act, but as a way of being. And that starts with a choice to stay rooted. Rooted in the truth of who you are. Rooted in the presence of God. Rooted in the belief that every step matters. Even the ones that feel small or slow or uncertain. Annie doesn't offer formulas. She offers rhythm. Because courage looks different every day. Some days courage looks like speaking up. Other days it looks like staying silent. Some days it looks like taking the leap. Other days it looks like holding steady. But all of it counts. There are no lesser brave acts. Making dinner when you're exhausted? Brave. Sitting through therapy when it hurts? Brave. Walking into a new church? Brave. Telling someone, I'm not okay? Brave. Letting someone love you when you feel unworthy? Brave. Trying again. Always brave. This journey is not about becoming a superhero version of yourself. It's about becoming more human, more honest, more attuned to the spirit whispering in your everyday. And here's where Annie's legacy really lands. Bravery isn't for the spotlight. It's for the quiet places. The places no one sees. The internal choices. The little yes. The small deaths. The slow blooming. Because bravery isn't just about what you do. It's about who you're becoming. So let me ask you, who are you becoming? Who are you when no one's giving you a gold star for your progress? What kind of life are you quietly building? And what will you do when the applause fades, when the next brave thing isn't clear, when the waiting stretches longer than you planned? You'll remember what you learned here. That you are not alone. That God is near in the becoming. That your voice matters. That your story is still unfolding. That nothing is wasted. Not your grief. Not your longing, not your detours. You'll remember that bravery is not the absence of fear. It's choosing love in the face of it. And you'll keep walking. Because here's the beautiful, raw truth. Courage grows best in imperfection. In the days when you fail. In the moments when you fall apart. In the confusion, the waiting, the in-between. That's where the roots deepen. That's where the good stuff grows. And you don't have to get it right all the time. You don't have to be fearless. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to keep showing up. Day after day. Prayer after prayer. Step after step. Because this whole journey, the one you've walked through all 8 clusters, has never been about arrival. It's been about becoming brave enough to live awake to your life. To walk with your eyes open. To feel what you feel. To trust God in the middle. To celebrate the little victories. To risk love again. To rest. To begin. To begin again. There is no finish line to bravery. There's only the next brave thing. And maybe that's the quiet miracle of this whole experience. You no longer see bravery as a peak to reach, but as a path to walk. One step at a time. In your own skin. In your own season. In your own unique rhythm. And that is enough. Because brave doesn't mean perfect. It just means present. So here we are, friend. On the other side of 100 days. And somehow at the very beginning, because now it's your turn, to take what you've learned and live it, to be the one who remembers, the one who roots down, the one who whispers to someone else, you can do this too. Because this brave life, it was never just for you. It was always meant to ripple. So go light your candle, send the text, book the appointment, take the walk, pray the prayer, write the page, speak the truth, hold the silence. Rest your weary soul. And begin again. Always begin again. You are brave enough. You always have been. And now you know it too. Prepares you for. Bravery often leads you into uncertainty. Not because you did something wrong. But because real faith, deep faith requires surrender. And surrender always lands us in unfamiliar territory. This cluster isn't about answers. It's about staying steady without them. It's about holding the line when the lights are dim and the roadmap's gone missing. It's about believing that not knowing is not failing. That confusion is not the absence of calling. That wandering is not wasted. Annie doesn't write this cluster explicitly, but her heart echoes it in every page that came before. We're not called to certainty, we're called to trust. Trust is what turns a brave act into a brave life. It's what sustains you through the fog. It's what teaches you to live untethered from outcomes. Because let's be honest, most of us don't struggle with bravery in the decision. We struggle with bravery in the waiting. We struggle when the fruit doesn't come quickly. When people don't respond the way we hoped. When the voice of doubt comes back louder. When it seems like God is silent. But what if this silence is sacred? What if these unknowns are not setbacks but sanctuaries? What if this stretch, where nothing is certain and everything feels fragile, is actually where you become someone new? That's what this cluster calls us into. Brave enough to trust the unknown. Brave enough to walk with God, even when there's no map. And trust isn't passive. It's not just sitting still and twiddling your thumbs waiting for a sign. Trust is active surrender. It's waking up and doing what you can. It's praying even when heaven feels far away. It's moving forward even when you don't have the full picture. It's believing that God's goodness is bigger than your timeline. That His plans don't hinge on your clarity. That He is still writing when you feel stuck. And trust doesn't mean you stop feeling fear. It just means you don't let fear write the ending. This cluster is the gentle reminder that it's okay not to have it all figured out. You don't need a 5-year plan to be faithful. You don't need certainty to move forward. You don't need confirmation to keep showing up. What you need is this presence. And trust is built in presence. Not in knowing what comes next, but in staying connected to the God who does. Annie would tell you, you don't have to be the strongest. You don't have to be the most prepared. You just have to be willing to let go, to say, even this belongs, to believe that God is with you in the in-between, even when you're doubting, even when you're drifting, even when the miracle hasn't come, He is still here. And so are you. That's trust. That's the final brave act. To keep choosing the journey, even when the path disappears under your feet. To say yes to what is, while releasing what isn't. To be brave enough for the unknown. So here we are. The final quiet breath of a long, faithful journey. You've walked through fear. You've learned to dream. You've committed to the work. You've practiced love. You've made peace with your present. You've come home to yourself. You've endured uncertainty. You've kept going without clarity. And now you stand on the edge of a brand new becoming. Not because you've conquered the fear once and for all, but because you've learned to walk with it. Not because life is easier now, but because you are stronger now. Not because the path is straight, but because you trust the one who goes with you. So take one last breath with me. The journey is never really over. Because every day asks for your bravery. Every moment invites your trust. And every unknown is just another doorway into grace. You are brave. Brave enough for what's next. Brave enough to rest. Brave enough to rise again. Chapter 11. Brave enough to finish well and begin again. So here we are. The end, right? But if we've learned anything by now, it's this. Every ending is also a new beginning. That's the tension of life with God. It loops. It expands. It circles back and takes you deeper, not just farther. You don't finish 100 days to brave and magically become fearless. You finish it and realize you're more deeply human than you were before, and somehow more open to grace than ever. That's what it means to finish well. It's not crossing a finish line and throwing your arms up in triumph. It's pausing, breathing, and saying, wow, look how far God has brought me. Look how much I've learned to trust. Look how many brave choices I made in silence. Look how I came alive. Annie may have written the last official page 100 days ago, but this cluster, this moment, this finishing, it's a kind of liturgy, a sacred acknowledgement that you didn't quit, that you kept showing up, that you're not the same person who started. And finishing well isn't about perfection. It's not about whether you journaled every day or hit every milestone. It's about being able to sit with the whole story, your story, and bless it. Not because it was flawless, but because it was faithful. And faithfulness is the soil of brave living. So let's pause here and ask the sacred question. How do we finish well when our story still feels unfinished? Here's the answer Annie would give. You finish with gratitude. You finish by looking back with kindness and looking forward with hope. You finish by honoring all the versions of you who kept showing up, even when it didn't feel brave at all. You finish by remembering that bravery was never about feeling strong. It was about staying true. And you stayed, even when you wanted to run, even when the pages felt repetitive, even when you doubted whether any of this was working. You kept going. That's not just brave. That's beautiful. And that's how you begin again. Because here's the great irony of finishing something like 100 Days to Brave. As soon as you're done, you're invited to begin again. Maybe not with the same book. Maybe not with the same format. But with the same posture of surrender, of openness, of willingness. Because the brave life isn't made in a 100-day devotional. It's made in 1,000 hidden decisions long after the devotional ends. It's made in the decision to pray one more time when nothing feels like it's changing. In the email you send to try to mend a friendship. In the afternoon you spend resting instead of performing. In the budget you finally face with honesty. In the art you dare to make, even when you doubt it's good enough. In the silence you embrace, not out of fear but out of peace. That's where bravery lives now. And so we name this final cluster for what it really is. A sacred handoff. From the page to your life. From the rhythm of devotionals to the rhythm of embodied faith. From Annie's voice to your own. You are brave enough to carry this forward. You don't need permission. You don't need a new plan. You just need your next yes. Whatever it looks like. Even if it's quiet. Even if it's weird. Even if it scares you a little. Or a lot. Even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. Because that's what finishing well really means. It means you're finally living like you believe you're free. And free people don't wait to be told what to do. They move with the Spirit. They love without shame. They risk without apology. They rest without guilt. They dream without fear. They begin again without panic. And maybe that's the most brave thing of all. To live your life, unrushed, unedited, unafraid. To trust that everything you learned in these pages is already in you now. And to walk forward with open hands. Not with striving. Not with pressure. But with joy. Because you didn't just finish something. You became someone. And that person, she's brave. She's ready. She's you.